Nigeria records 3.98% growth in fourth quarter of 2021 with transportation, mining and financial services sector driving growth. Asia Pacific stocks mix as investors continue to assess impact of Russia-Ukraine tensions. 30 vessels to deliver additional supply of 2.3 billion liters of PMS as oil heads for weekly fall on Iranian oil hopes. The program is Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Benny Adams, your guide. It is that time we talk business, and we start by telling you that the Petroleum Tanker Drivers Association (PTD), the National Association of Road Transport Workers (NATO), and National Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers (NUPENG) have suspended their planned nationwide strike action. And this is the outcome of an engagement by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited to address concerns raised by the key players on the 21 road rehabilitation by the NNPC Limited. Lydia Sampson reports.
The supply chain already challenged by the methanol blended petrol issue, the NNPC's determination to intervene, the Chief Executive Officer, Mele Kyari, says, is to mitigate further hardship on the people.
We agreed to work together to ensure that we monitor these projects closely so that they deliver on time and on cost, and also to ensure that the resources available are applied for that purpose only. Also, we agreed that we will work jointly to ensure that the current tightness that we are seeing in the market is eliminated very, very speedily. This includes adequate distribution of products that we know they are already available in the country, and so that truck drivers and our other partners involved in this process cooperate with us so that Nigerians can have the relief that they deserve, very, very speedily.
To fast-track seamless product supply and availability, the critical stakeholders' engagement between the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Petroleum Tanker Drivers Association, National Association of Road Transport Owners (NATO), and National Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers (NUPENG), after reviewing grey areas, resolved to strengthen collaboration at all levels to ensure seamless operations in the downstream. The Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority informed the meeting that already a committee has been constituted to review freight rates involving members of the PTD, NATO and NUPENG in addition to all the stakeholders. Parties at the meeting agreed to work expeditiously towards concluding the review of the freight rate and making recommendations to the government. They urged the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority to advise on definite closeout date. The key players agreed to work closely to ensure efficient distribution of petroleum products across the country. In Abuja, Lydia Sampson.
As long queues at petrol stations abate the average cost paid by Nigerian consumers for a litre of automotive gas oil, popularly known as diesel, recorded a significant increase in January 2022. Diesel price watch report released by the National Bureau of Statistics for January 2022 shows that a litre of diesel increased by 28.12% from 224 naira 90 kobo per litre, recorded in January 2021 to 288 naira 1 kobo. According to the report, southern states paid the highest for a liter of diesel in the month under review, with southeast citizens paying as high as 317 naira 45 kobo per liter, followed by southwest region with 314 naira 25 kobo a liter. On the other hand, the northwestern areas paid the least for a liter of diesel at 243 naira 92 kobo in January 2022, followed by northeastern region with an average of 269 naira 89 kobo per liter, according to the country's apex statistical body. And oil prices extended losses on Friday and were heading for a weekly fall as the prospects of increased Iranian oil exports eclipsed fears of potential supply disruption resulting from the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Brent crude futures fell $2.44 to $90.53 a barrel, earlier extending a 1.9% drop from the previous session. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures shed $2.39 to $89.37 a barrel after sliding 2% on Thursday. Fears over possible supply disruptions resulting from the Russian military presence at Ukraine's borders have capped losses this week. Nigeria is blessed with an array of wonderful products unique to certain areas and regions, like the famous Yauri onions, the Sokoto red skin goats, Kaduna ginger, Taraba cotton, and the Mambila Highland tea in the north, Ofada rice and Ijebu gari in the southwest, Nsuka yellow pepper, and Abakaliki rice in the east, in addition to Benue yams, among other heritage commodities. But the gap in knowledge of such geographical indications and absence of a specific legal framework to harness the economic gains of such commodities for global export has been the bane. Protecting these products by adding value and premium on them is what the European Union, the Nigerian government, and the World Intellectual Property Rights and Innovation in Africa is partnering to achieve.
Agri-food and drink products, which have names that are protected by the European Union as geographical indications, represent a sales value of about 75 billion euro. Currently, over 1/5 of this amount is generated by exports that originate outside of the European Union. This represents a huge opportunity for indigenous exporters who can now capitalize on improved product reputation and the willingness of consumers to pay a premium.
Whether it's champagne, whether it's Dutch Edam cheese, pasta, they command a premium. We in Africa deserve to have people pay a premium for our products. No more exploitation, no more misappropriation. We must begin to take ownership of what is ours and treat it with the respect and legal protection that it deserves.
The EU is proud to support this project. It aims to draw up draft legislation and map out the necessary institutional framework to establish a register of geographical indications, or GIs. This enables authentic products to gain recognition and protection through GI registration.
Data on performance of Nigeria's economy for the fourth quarter of 2021 shows that the gross domestic product GDP grew by 3.98% from 4.09% in the third quarter. Statistician General of the Federation, Simon Harry, who announced the figures in Abuja, said the economy has maintained a positive trajectory despite the global economic downturn caused by the COVID-19 and other factors. Muplang Dakok has details of the figures.
The economy exited the COVID-19-induced recession in the fourth quarter of 2020, and since then, the economy has witnessed 4 consecutive quarters of positive growth. After recording 4.08% growth in the third quarter of last year, GDP grew by 3.98% during the fourth quarter, putting the 2021 annual growth rate at 3.4%.
Analytically, it's important to know that certainly by the time you bring in the base effect of the preceding period, you discover that the 3.98% that is being recorded today certainly is relatively higher than the 4.03% as recorded during the quarter 3 of 2021.
As diversification deepens, the non-oil sector again outpaced the oil sector in the fourth quarter of 2021.
In the case of the non-oil sector, recorded growth rate of 4.73% during the fourth quarter of 2021 in real terms, and an improvement from 1.69% as reported during the fourth quarter of 2020.
The Bureau states that the fastest growing activities in real terms were air transport, coal mining, metal ores, quarrying and other minerals, rail transport and pipeline, road transport, water supply, sewage, waste management, and financial institutions. On the other hand, oil refining, crude petroleum and natural gas, wood and wood products, pulp, paper and paper products, and textile, apparel and footwear were the slowest. In Abuja, Muplang, Dakok.
The performance of the Nigerian economy has witnessed a sustained positive growth for 5 consecutive quarters since the recession in 2020, leading to the growth of 3.98% in the last quarter. Joining me to discuss factors responsible for this growth and expectations going forward is an economist. He is Dr. Tefer Abram. Doctor, it's always a pleasure to have you to discuss these figures.
Thank you, Benny.
You know how it is like. 3.98%. Did you expect this? Did it meet your expectations?
Okay, 3.98% growth. So we came into 2021 doing 0.51%.
Yes.
Then we jumped second quarter to 5.01%. Then we were able to stay on that 4%, 3%. Yes, there was a decline from second to third and fourth. But the good news is that we stayed positive. And year on year, in terms of compared 2021 completely with 2020, we grew better than in 2020, meaning that we've recovered fully from all the recession that was brought about by COVID-19. It also signals that all the judicious mix of monetary and fiscal policy has finally yielded the positive signal to be able to maintain positive GDP growth and to signal to investors that Nigeria remains the destination.
Well, you know, if you remember the last 2 years, the 2020 recession, we were talking about predictions into recovery, how fast we are going to recover, whether in the first quarter or the second quarter, projecting some fiscal policies that should be put into place and all of that. How has that played out to contributing to this sustained growth that we're experiencing?
Yeah, generally, macroeconomic indicators, GDP, inflation, exchange rate, interest rate, monetary policy rate, all those counter-cyclical monetary policy, economic indicators, what they do is to serve as signals for economic units, consumers, investors, and government to guide their investment decisions or consumption decision or how to spend in terms of public or private. Now, all those forecast or analysis that was done prior to today helped in giving to economic units, investors, consumers, and government analysis and an overall assessment of how the economy is performing and how the indicators is likely to change amidst the challenge of crude oil price or insecurity or declining foreign reserve, as it were, or unstable exchange rate. And all those things is important because it helps the investor maintain a steady path on its investment. Economics works based on expectation, consumer expectation. CBN has a good data on consumer expectation. It just tells you that regardless of how everything is, how should consumer spending continue? How should investment spending continue? All those analyses, they played a very healthy role. It's like medical tests to test, quick test on one's heart rate or blood sugar level to see how we can continue maintaining investment in our economy so that investors will be guided. Like I said, once economic data is rolled out and investors and consumers don't act on it, then we'll have our economy rolling back. So it shows that timely release of data by the NBS, by the CBN, and all economic management agencies is helping economic units and investors guide their investment. So it's doing good to help us know how to invest despite all the instability. Don't forget, before GDP data came out, inflation data came out. Inflation data showed us that some states were high in inflation, others were low. Those states that were high in inflation, what that means is that there's much investment gap in those states, because inflation means a lot of demand is chasing fuel supply. So if you go into those states, you will be able to identify 1 or 2 sectors to invest in. And for states with lower inflation, for instance, it shows that there's need for increased public spending and private sector spending. The overall GDP data just shows that despite external, endogenous and exogenous shocks, Nigerian economy remains stable and viable for investment, domestic and foreign.
Okay. If you look at sector-to-sector contributions, the non-oil sector has played a very huge part, which is to say the Nigerian economy is being diversified. Well, I see the diversification process is actually gaining grounds. How does this apply to revenue?
Great. The effort entirely has been to strengthen the revenue we get from non-oil revenue, from tax measures, non-tax measures, everything just to innovate on the non-oil revenue part. And the central bank's recent policy that seeks to... The RT 200 policy seeks to identify sectors that will make banks to invest in so that they can attract their own foreign exchange that is not reliant on central bank supply. So, and the focus of that policy is how banks can support non-oil sectors to increase the earnings we get from non-oil sector in terms of foreign exchange. Then there's also Nexim Bank that is doing a whole lot to identify cash crops, commodities that have export values to support their value chain so that they too can enhance their own export earnings. So generally, oil will still remain a big player in terms of how much foreign exchange it brings to our economy. But expanding our domestic capacity to see that it also creates employment and attracts its own foreign exchange is what we see playing out. So services is growing, agriculture is growing, industry is growing, and they are all running on digital space advantage. So these are the factors that are driving the Nigerian economy as it were. So you see that our domestic consumption, the resilience of our entrepreneurs, small and medium scale enterprises, CBN's Anchors Borrowers Program, CBN's 100 for 100 PPP policy, all these things are just coming together. And the many works that humanitarian is doing, Ministry of Finance, and many other sectors, SMIDAN and the whole rest, private sector intervention, everything is playing out to just help our economy remain resilient, which is something we need now than ever.
Well, you mentioned oil and its possible contributions to this growth. Where did you drive from to get to this place?
Well, oil...
Did you witness queues?
Oh, no.
Let's talk about the long fuel queues and their attendant consequences. Do you see this affecting the figures for this quarter? Talking about the economic impact of this.
Yes, some of us we have federal mind. We're always hopeful and positive. The NNPC
I like
has
federal.
The NNPC have been engaging a whole lot to ensure that it addresses this fuel supply shortage. The political economy of it is not something we can just say over 1 minute or 2 minutes. But one thing I know is that the economic actors responsible for addressing crude oil supply are not sleeping. And if you check the length of the queue, as you rightly asked, is reducing. And you see there's NCDC patrolling, everybody patrolling. Even road safety is helping to control traffic on filling stations. So you can see the whole Nigerian economy as a state working together to ensure that despite the odds, we remain resilient.
I like the hopefulness.
Yes, certainly.
Well, what sectors should we be looking at to drive the figures, talking about sustaining this growth?
Okay, great. Here's the news. Agriculture remains positive, but it has been declining slowly for the whole fourth quarter. Agriculture is one sector that should remain high up there. The growth is still positive, but it's not growing as it should. We need to do a lot to revamp agriculture, especially strengthen its value chain, so that from the farmer to the marketer to the person who stores to the person who processes, who buys in bulk and process, everybody cashes out in terms of ensuring that the sector becomes more profitable,
more viable,
more
and
viable.
Everybody gets to benefit
exactly
at every point in time.
Certainly.
Across the whole value chain.
And then the digital economy is one sector now. It's like the new engine for every old car. It is one space that is driving services, industry, agriculture, financial services,
and with
insurance.
the 5G being rolled out, how far can
with
we
the 5G,
go by
our nation's digital policy, as our internet connectivity policy, our own broadband policy, what I mean is something that we must be careful how we grow our economy to hang everything on the digital space. What I always advocate for is what has always been traditional in economic analysis. We must find a balanced, a healthy traditional labor capital mix for every sector of operation.
Every sector.
It is totally dangerous for a Nigerian sector.
It's a transition that should be looked at carefully.
It is dangerous for any sector of the Nigerian economy to be 100% online or 100% technologically driven.
When it goes down, it goes down.
We must find that optimal
Thank you so very much,
Thank you, Benny. My pleasure.
Abraham, for this
Thank
contribution.
you, Benny. My pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, moving on, how are prices of other commodities on the global market faring? Let's take a look. And now to the markets. Investors in Nigeria are smiling this week as the stock market wraps up the week on a positive note. The NGX All-Share Index appreciated marginally to close at 47,140.48 basis points. Market capitalization went up marginally to 25.406 trillion naira from 25.3 trillion naira recorded on Thursday. 424.695 million transactions were recorded, valued at 6.523 billion naira in 4,601 deals. The stock market in Nigeria closed positive on Wednesday as investors gained 27.79 billion and the NGX All-Share Index inched up by 0. Amid negative market breadth. Let's take a look at the global scene.
Stocks around the world are recovering while global sentiment is hanging in the balance as the Ukraine-Russia crisis reaches a pivotal moment. European markets were muted on Friday. Germany's DAX and London FTSE both rose 0.2%, while CAC 40 of France added 0.6%. Stocks in Asia were mixed as investors in the region accessed the risks from the simmering tensions between Ukraine and Russia. Japan's Nikkei 225 shed 0.41% to close at 27,122.07. Hong Kong Hang Seng Index dropped about 1%, while mainland Chinese stocks closed higher as the Shanghai Composite gained 0.66% to 3,490.76. U.S. stock futures pointed higher in early trade after the Dow posted its worst day of 2022 during regular trading hours on Thursday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average appreciated by 0.51% and S&P 500 gained 0.56%. Nasdaq Composite also advanced 0.61%. African market traded mixed on Friday. South Africa's GSA Africa Top 40 and Ghana's GSA Composite were flat. Nairobi's All-Share, Tunisia's Tunidex and Namibia's overall index were on the rise. That's Global Market Review. I am Boss Sede Abel.
Incessant fluctuations in the price of cooking gas and instability in supply are becoming the two leading issues of concern for home and industrial users of liquefied natural gas in Nigeria. Veronica Emmanuel here examines the causes and effects of this instability and the way forward.
It may be one of the quickest modes of cooking and arguably one of the fastest ways to get food from the kitchen to the table. But Philemon Yakubu understands too well that it doesn't happen that way all the time.
I need to go and fill the gas again.
An exhausted gas cylinder at the least expected time is a common occurrence for frequent users, as Chubuke Umunakwe, a businessman, would readily attest to. It would seem that for most users, quick cooking with a cleaner LNG comes with the pain of frequent refill. The price of refilling a gas cylinder depends on the size, and prices have fluctuated in recent times.
The price was a little bit higher I bought about 28,700 as of last year.
But after a seemingly extended upward spike in prices, there has been a drop, with users now able to purchase a 12.5 kg cylinder for 7,500 naira against 8,500 naira that it was sold for 3 months ago.
I feel little happy, sure, but it's not that kind of enough happy, because the price we normally bought before is not what you bought it today. The price is still high.
I filled my gas today and I'm happy it went down, unlike before. Before it was pretty higher, so I have to fill it for 1.8 for half.
Price and frequency of usage are two critical factors always in the mind of the user. But more importantly, in the middle of those two elements is the consumer's appreciation that they are getting their money's worth at the gas refill depot. In some sense, Nigerians feel somewhat entitled to having cooking gas readily available at a far cheaper price. This is not unrelated to the fact that Nigeria is a gas-producing nation and has an enormous reserve of natural gas.
Liquefied gas offers clean energy, which is quick and efficient and has less disruptive impact on the environment. But ensuring safety is another matter.
Cylinder is one of the most life-endangering products. The basic information you need to know about the cylinder is always there at the upper part of the cylinder. If you fill it with gas, confirm that there is no leakage.
Business Express returns next week. Do have a safe weekend.
Hello and welcome. It's time for another interesting package of
Everything Music.
Angelina, you dey cool in my temperature. If you call, I go come deliver.
This is Talking Movies.
In times of old, the world was full of wonder.